Well, I think we've had a variety of opportunities to use some leadership skills over the past 6 months since the first meeting we had. We've had the response to Haiti, which obviously has had a lot of contextual needs to use different leadership models as you respond both nationally and internationally to a wide variety of needs of the population, and then how you coordinate that across federal agencies. There's also been some real tactical opportunities in planning for the next big hurricane, the next big event. Had some opportunities with the federal government to plan for what we're calling functional needs now, and kind of the complication of not knowing who's responsible for different portions of the population, those who have special needs or disabilities or issues for accessibility, and then the complication of when you open a shelter, who has that accountability to make sure that that shelter is accessible, who has those resources to make sure it is, and to make sure that people can get in there. And I think what we learned, and what I started to apply through the meta leadership skills, was that's not the real question. The question is, how do we solve the problem? Not figure out who's in charge, but how do we solve the problem? And so we really, myself and a couple of other members started to look across agencies. And we've come up with a pretty good solution that FEMA's beginning to put into action. We think a broad plan is coming out around using just a general sheltering model, but then facilitating the resources through every agency to meet the needs that come up once you assess the realities of the situation. So I just think that skill set of looking broader than your own agency and not concerning yourself so much with who's responsible or where the blame, where the accountability is, but where the problem is and what the solution should be, is just a valuable tool that I haven't learned anywhere else. Well, the five dimensions, the most valuable to me is, and this has happened across my career, is the leading up. In past leadership training, it's been called challenging up. But just that skill set of looking to the people who have authority above you as an opportunity to shape their decision, and trying to lead up to the right answer using the ballast of the other agencies you're trying to coordinate as leverage to say this is the right answer, and it's not just my opinion, it's this broader group's opinion. The other big piece, though, of the framework is that leading without authority, and that was something we've hit on in class several times, is that there's many instances where you may have the accountability or the responsibility for solving an issue, but no real authority over it. And so that ability to look broader than your own sphere and try to solve a problem that's bigger than yourself and bigger than your role, even if you may have that kind of accountability for, you may not be the decision maker. So looking for those opportunities to kind of lead up, to challenge that, and try to find the right solution is really powerful. The biggest change is looking for those opportunities for my staff to lead up to me. So allowing them that flexibility of trying to stay out of the weeds of what they're trying to do, the solutions they're trying to find, and let them lead across their divisions or sectors or even partner agencies they're working with, and then to lead up both myself and my supervisors to try to figure out what the best solution is. Let them challenge. Let them come to those solutions and challenge up for the right answer, and give them that flexibility. I think especially in emergency response or preparedness, disaster response, we're very action-oriented people. So sometimes we're not willing to wait around for our workforce to come up with solutions. We'd like to get our hands in there and say, this is the answer, this is what we're going to do. And many times that's the right way to go. But there's also a lot of times in preparedness or in long-term recovery where you do have the time to sit back and let those solutions develop. And for the most part, they're always better than what you would have come up on your own. And I think it's a valuable tool, but to just allow those same skills to be passed down no matter what level in the organization that staff is. I think especially if it was someone in the kind of sphere of emergency management, the concept of being in the basement is something that I hadn't learned before. I've definitely gone through it before, but didn't recognize it. And it's kind of that self-awareness of knowing that you're in that situation, that you will come out of it, and that trying to build that resilience to come out of that measurement of this is when I'm going to see innovation, is when I can slowly come out of that basement, begin to innovate, begin to solve problems, and that's just an awareness tool that I didn't have before. That's extremely valuable when making decisions in a crisis situation. I think the other piece that's extremely great is the connections, the breadth of federal agencies that are in the room. The experience of the people in the class, and the depth at which we get to share issues and topics and concerns that even though you may have FEMA on one side, the Red Cross in the middle, or the FBI on the left, there are common threads across us in the way we have to lead and manage that are just invaluable. And you don't get that out of a book. It's just by the time you spend working together and talking and interacting, and this program gives you all those opportunities. Well, it's each time it's always frightening, and I think it should be to an extent. When you're dealing with a crisis, there should be that a little bit of a sense of fear to make sure you're making the right decision, that you have the best interests at heart. So my initial phase is always the same, and it's that going into the basement, and it does take a bit to come out of it. It's starting to figure out what the problem is, what the situation is, and the way when I go in the basement, the first thing I start to do is pull data in. That's my security blanket. So how big is this operation? How many homes are destroyed? How many people are displaced? And I'm looking for numbers. And then once you dig out of that, then I'm starting to begin to look for context. What are the needs of the people who are displaced? Are they elderly? Do they take their medications? Can they go back home immediately, or is this going to be a 2 or 3 or 4 month displacement? Those are all issues that I begin to think in critical situations, to think strategically long term on how to take that opportunity, so that acting in time concept that we learned in the class of looking for the opportunities to engage the public on the right choice. And the second piece is always looking back on past disasters when I missed those opportunities and trying to learn from those mistakes and gain again. So the Haiti response, great example. I was the lead for a domestic piece on the folks who were evacuating to the United States. And that's just a huge challenge. So it's that wave first of just collecting, where are people landing, where are the planes going, but then challenging myself to look farther out and say, what are the needs going to be in 6 months? These people who are coming into our communities completely isolated from their families and loved ones in Haiti, what will they need, and how will we build a structure to meet that? And I think the skills of the framework really lend to that strategic viewpoint and looking beyond that initial crisis. I think the one thing that I've learned after taking the initial class and then going back and watching my leadership above me on how they deal with the crisis is coming to the awareness that everyone goes into the basement. And I don't think it's a skill you can, for the most part, I haven't seen someone avoid the basement in a crisis. They may be much better at masking it, or much better at having coping mechanisms to deal with it, or having a much shorter time in the basement, but everyone goes there. And that's given me, it's refreshing. And when you're dealing with high-powered executives and with members of Congress and heads of federal agencies, to just take that step back and say, they're dealing with this crisis just as much as I am in that initial wave. We need to take a few moments to digest and move forward, but to give people a little bit of slack and to just work with them in making decisions so that we're not jumping right into critical decisions too quickly that may have unintended consequences 2 weeks, 2 months down the road. So that's been a valuable tool. I know I've had that discussion with my boss who hasn't had the course, and I shared with him about the basement, and then we've talked about that. As we've come through disasters, we've talked about it. Are you in it? Am I in it? And it's just been a really valuable tool to connect with leadership. And there's so many facets of the framework that each time you go through something, you pull out a different nugget. And I think the connectivity piece have a lot to learn on how to build that when we have time. And not just because it's a good idea, because it's the right way to do things. And not just to make it a tool we have, but the way we do business is to build allegiances across agencies, across states, to come up with solutions, and try to avoid it being a competitive environment for how we do business in the disaster world. And many times it is very competitive between agencies in the preparedness mode, not in the response. And so needing to take the time to really analyze how we make decisions and to reflect on that post-event so we can do it much better next time.